Dr. Charles Neff, Vice President for University Church Relations and Dean of the Chapel at Oklahoma City University. From 2003 to 2007, I served as the Associate Pastor for Education and Adult Ministry at Faith United Methodist Church in Tulsa. I can remember in the spring of 2003 hopping on a plane from Ohio, where I was in my last year of seminary, flying to Tulsa, being met at the airport by the district superintendent, and who drove me to the church where I met with Pastor Linda in her office, took a tour of the building, and then met with the Staff Parish Relations Committee that night before flying back to Ohio the next day. It was a whirlwind trip, but from the very beginning I could tell that my gifts for ministry fit very well with the needs of faith at the time. It was a great first meeting, and it really set the tone for the 4 years to come. For the years that I served at Faith, the thing that made it special to me was its willingness to try new things. I was a young pastor full of ideas, and we had a fairly young team that was ready to push boundaries and to try new things, and no one ever said no. We were able to be creative, to go in new directions. Sometimes things didn't work, and that was fine. We just didn't do them again. Sometimes things worked great, and we built upon them the next year and the next year and the next year. It was just a great atmosphere to be in, and it really did make Faith special, because so many churches get stuck in a rut, don't want to try anything new, but that wasn't Faith. Faith was always willing to try something new. Well, the people of Faith are some of the best that I've ever been around. The thing that I think defines the people of Faith UMC the most is their heart for missions, their heart for outreach. In the time that I spent at Faith, I don't think a day passed that we weren't looking for new ways to be in outreach, both to our neighbors, but also to people around the world, as well as people within the church. Whenever there was a need, somebody would step up to fill it. Whenever there was a mission project to be done, it was never hard to get a dozen or more people to sign up right away. Folks were generous with their money, helping to scholarship folks on mission trips, youth and other adults. It was just a wonderful place to see the love of Christ being acted out in very tangible ways. And I think the people of Faith embody that mission spirit. And it certainly, to me, brings fond memories of my time at Faith. One of my responsibilities at Faith was the senior adults group, and so each month I would take the group somewhere around the state, either close to home or farther away. One of the trips that we had planned was the Brahms Farm down in Tuttle, south of Oklahoma City, and so we left out from the church early one morning in the church van. We were heading down the highway, and right outside Chandler, the back tire blew out. We were going highway speeds, but God's angels were with us. We got the car off to the side. But by the time I managed to get the tire changed, somehow I had stripped 4 of the 8 bolts. And so when we got it over to the tire shop, they were able to replace the tire, but they said, you can't go over about 35 miles an hour. So by this point, the Brahms Farm was out. We weren't going to be doing the Brahms Farm that day. So I just pointed the van up Route 66, and we took a very leisurely drive, 35 miles an hour, up Route 66 all the way back to Faith. But we stopped at the Rock Cafe in Stroud, and the group, they didn't get mad. They rolled with the punches, and they made the best of it, and it ended up being a pretty neat trip. But unfortunately, in my time at Faith, we never made it back to the Brahms Farm. During the construction process for the sanctuary, the team was so worried about the bounce in the balcony that we convinced the contractors to test it out We were so worried that when we got to the point that we needed to add pews or chairs up in the balcony that it would just be so bouncy that people wouldn't want to sit up there. So the contractor agreed to test the weight on the balcony. So what they did is they brought up these huge 50-gallon drums and set them in the balcony and filled them with water and left them. Then the whole building committee went up there to walk around and see how the bounce was once there was weight in the balcony. And the bounce was a little bit better, but what happened was they left those 50-gallon drums up there for so long that they left rust spots on the concrete. And I suspect if you go up there today, you look underneath the carpet, you'll see these round rust rings from those 50-gallon drums, which goes back to the building committee's worry of the bounce in the balcony. I know that Jim Dowdy will probably want to take credit for this, but I'm going to take credit for the chairs in the chapel and the spaces in the sanctuary where on Easter and Christmas those chairs fill in. As we were planning those spaces, I just had it in mind that we were going to want some flexibility in our worship spaces, and so I lobbied strongly for chairs in the chapel. And then when we got to the sanctuary and the decision was made to go with pews, I lobbied for those empty spaces between the rows to serve as passageways during worship, but then also with space enough to fill in with chairs for the big services of the Christian year. So I got to see that in action the few Christmases and Easters that I spent there after construction was finished. So I'm going to take credit for that. Don't let Jim tell you otherwise. The very last thing that I did before leaving Faith in 2007 was working with Diane Dowdy to film segments for VBS. My move date was coming up at the end of May. VBS was later in the summer. But Diane was my partner in crime. We went into the chapel, we set up the video camera, and together the two of us filmed all of the opening and closing segments for VBS that year. I was a jellyfish, I believe. Yes, I think I was a jellyfish and she was a starfish, and we just had a great back and forth, and it was just a joy to be able to do that as my last contribution to Faith before leaving. Congratulations, Faith, for 40 great years of ministry, and thank you for letting me share a small part of that. I'm looking forward to hearing about all the great things that God has in store for you for the future.